What's up guys, Chris here, back in Anthem with a brand new video, and today I kinda wanna talk a bit about the game, about its current state, some of the things that I think Anthem does best, some of the things that I believe the game does worst, so kind of present you this list, especially now that we do know Anthem 2.0 is officially in the works. BioWare has announced this previously, so just a few days ago they posted it on their official blog, so it actually does sound quite exciting, especially for those who are still left in the game, still enjoying it. And I will say this, the game still feels enjoyable from time to time. I'm still jumping in it, having some fun, though there are some frustrations that I still have about the game, so I'm gonna present all of these in this video so that you know what to expect from Anthem in case you might want to jump back in, or in case you find it heavily discounted on the internet and might be tempted to play the game finally. So I'm gonna go over, let's just say, my typical day in Anthem as an endgame player so that you know what to expect once you reach that point. So let's go over the fact that I'm here in Fort Tarsis. This is still like the main player hub. You're still moving in slowly, even though there is a small sprint over here. It doesn't feel too tedious because you're not spending too much time into it. You also have like the quick access to the start expedition screen, so that's not much of a deal. But otherwise, what are the things that you would be doing at this point and at this stage? Well, first of all, let's look at the weekly and the daily challenges, since these are, well, a little bit more important than usual. I think that there are some good things here that BioWare has changed over the months that have passed. Specifically, they have added certain quests that reward you Guardian tokens. So from all of the quests that you will see here, these are the only ones that actually matter and you should be doing, since these pretty much guarantee you a legendary item. So these are repeatable and you can get 2 of these per day, which is really awesome. There's also ones for the weekly, like if, for example, you finish expeditions. In this case, we have Temple of Scar under 20 minutes on GM3. Everything else can pretty much be ignored unless you really want the coins. I'm gonna go over the coins in just a little bit, but yeah, this is basically the upside of some of the few months that have passed since we previously, talked about many of these updates, but everything else still pretty much feels lackluster, especially like the monthly challenges. These are the most useless things I have seen so far because they don't reward you anything, which should be the exact opposite of how it is right now. The most difficult of the challenges, the monthlies, provide the worst, the worst rewards possible. 100 Master Amber, who even uses that? This brings us to the next activity. So after I am checking what dailies I have, I'm just basically going into my start expedition screen, and this brings us to a bunch of activities over here that I would normally do. Well, we have a few of these that have changed, but mainly there's just 2 that I am still doing, and I'm gonna start with one that I think is a good change, and I think that this is something that BioWare actually, at least had a bright idea of implementing, which is the seasonal dungeon or stronghold. In this week we have the Temple of the Scar, but this is on a weekly rotation, so next week we might have something else, and it basically changes all the time. So the thing that I like about this is the fact that they have implemented the score system from the Cataclysm update, which pretty much means you can repeat old content, go in, and it's going to be way more rewarding than ever before, especially on the highest difficulty. On Grandmaster 3 you're going in, and not only you have the encounters, the same old encounters that you always had in the game, you also have new puzzles, new collectibles, points together, and pretty much time trials over there. The faster you killed enemies, the faster you cleared the content, the more points it's going to give you. This kind of forces people to adapt to the new challenges, learn them, and this will also make most of the random parties that you find in the wild more efficient at clearing up the content. So this is quite in an opposite direction of how it was on day 1, for example, or even like several months after that until they introduced this. This definitely forces a lot of people to become better at the game, but it also means that in the beginning days when these get first introduced, like when the puzzles are fresh, when nobody knows about them, this also kinda creates this really messy situations where people don't really know what they're doing. So I guess that's the drawback of having this. Once they do get to that stage where it you know, feels natural to them and they know all the puzzles, it does feel good to find a proper party. But this is where the drawbacks pretty much start. We were talking about the fact that BioWare implemented a good way of revisiting old content. Well, here is the major drawback. This is still the same old content right here. You're still repeating the same strongholds that you always did. Now, the other thing you can jump into is, of course, either the free play, where there's free play events. You can also jump into regular strongholds without the score system, but I don't really see a reason to do that unless you're still leveling, or you know, you don't have good gear or whatever. So even in that case, it's still better to just go in and do the seasonal one instead of the stronghold. You can also do some legendary missions or legendary contracts, though even in that case these also became kinda useless. You might as well just go do a stronghold in the seasonal event and get way more gear and also get more points that you can later use on at the shop. But yeah, this pretty much leaves us with the free play, and free play is a little bit worth it in the sense that there are some achievements over there that do count to some of the challenges that are associated with, for example, in this case, the season of the Ice Tide, but you can apply all of these rules to any season or any content that is gonna drop in the future. For example, as you can see, as you finish more events, as you go in the free play and do all of those free play events over there, it's gonna give you more progression towards many of these achievements or challenges, and many of them will give you quite nice rewards, like 5,000 minor crystals, or another one that will give you even like armor sets. Now let's go over to the loot grind and all of that, because this is like the third most important thing. It's not just the content but also the loot grind. So what can you expect from the loot in the game? And for that, I'm gonna bring you up my stats screen basically and show you one of my characters. In this case, let's just go over my Storm. It's not like god tier or anything. I kind of neglected it in favor of my Colossus, but it's full of legendaries basically. As you can see, I have a lot of weapons over here. I have way many legendaries than I actually need, and you might be thinking, well, what do you even do with that many legendaries? And if they are legendaries, how come you have so many of them? Keep in mind that back in the days, like 6 or 8 months ago, people would have killed, well, metaphorically speaking, to have these many legendaries in just one single category. Well, there's some good things that changed with the loot system. First of all, the drop chance of legendaries in general has drastically increased over the months, especially in the last like 4 months. I believe that at one point we got 250% drop chance increase for legendary loot on Grandmaster 3. And this also brings us to the score system I was talking about. Since you have all of these points that you can easily get on Grandmaster 3, like you can get about 10,000 per run, even like with a mediocre group, you can go in and already afford 2 of these chests right here, which cost 5,000 crystals. So these are the upsides. Of course, I was also talking about those Guardian tokens, and you get these to the tombs of the Legionnaires. There's 4 of them in total, each giving you something different. I honestly prefer the tomb of Karif, I think was his name. You go in and it gives you like a legendary gear guaranteed for your current javelin, the one that you have equipped. But this is where like the positives end and the negatives kind of start, and I'm gonna specifically talk about some of the stats in this game. I mean, just look at the stats, for example, on this Steam vent. You have 28% gear recharge, 25 weapon damage, Q damage 28%, and 45% pickup radius. So these are still pretty much all over the place. So if you were to maximize, min-max your character and reliably build your own build, that would pretty much be impossible, because all of these stats are still random. You're still not gonna have any control over these, and the only thing that we achieved with this color change is exactly that. We just changed the colors from orange to, well, in this case, kind of like a green yellow from what I'm seeing. So that's all we did. You do feel more powerful, don't get me wrong. I mean, this 900 plus item level does increase your damage and your survivability by quite a lot. Your item level has an influence on your stats too, though again 1 year after the game's release, we still don't know exactly how much that is. So the chances for you to actually get what you want is still, you know, pretty low if you're aiming for a specific item. game. It also doesn't help the fact that, well, legendaries in general still don't feel that legendary. As a matter of fact, it's even less so nowadays since we have so many legendaries and we can get them with so much ease. So it's been diluted with all of these legendaries that drop all over the place. So the difference between these two is non-existent almost. As a matter of fact, the only difference is that this has higher power, well, item level in this case, and just slightly better stats. That's it. That's the only difference between this and this one. Anyway, let's also go over the economy, since economy is also important in the game. You might be thinking, well, you're going in dungeons, you're collecting resources, you're, spending money on things. Well, let's start with the featured shop, since this is like the only place you would reliably and actually spend it upon. Like, let's take for example these wraps, which, well, this one looks kinda okay, I think. 61,000 coins or 850 shards, 61,000 coins, 23,65. And you might be thinking, okay, maybe I can gather like 61,000 coins. I think you can make that in about 1, 2, 3 weeks of game time. In my case, for example, I had like 120k. Now I'm pretty much dirt poor. I am one of the poorest people in Fort Tarsis. I could start begging pretty much. I can just go in and start actively begging from those people, and if they were to give me like a penny each, I would eventually get more money than from these achievements. The game received a ton, and I mean a ton of cosmetics, a ton of new wraps, amazing looking wraps, even more amazing looking armor sets. But on the other side, some things that shouldn't cost nearly as much still cost to this day, especially those 61,000 wraps. This finally brings us to the gameplay, and to be more specific, combat and movement. I believe that if anybody would start playing Anthem right now, it would mostly be because of how the gameplay works. You have so much freedom of movement, you have so many places to fly in, to jump in, to run into, so definitely feels very fun, and all javelins feel very unique to control. The problem is, here is kinda where the upside stops and where the downside begins, as in all of this verticality that exists in the game is barely utilized. As a matter of fact, in like 99% of the combat that you will be doing, all the enemies will be no more than the ground level. Like, very few occasions some of the enemies might jump up in the air like a couple of meters and shoot at you, but that is basically it. No more can be said about verticality in this game, and even more so with the challenges. Though I will admit that some of the point collection in some of the strongholds do utilize the vertical space, so you will have to fly up to get some of these points. It does get utilized like that a little bit. Also, some of the puzzles get utilized in the air as well, since you have to collect some of the things, but combat generally still happens on the ground, and I suspect that's because it's too difficult for BioWare to program the AI and make it, reliably use it without running into a whole bunch of problems and glitches. So to sum everything up, should you even play Anthem in 2020 or just wait for 2.0 to finally drop? Well, here is my opinion on all of this. If you're a fresh player who never got a chance to play the game in the past, I would probably suggest you to just wait out until 2.0 drops, so you don't have to experience all of the frustration that current players or old players have experienced in the past, and it might also be a much better experience than it currently is. At most, if you do want to test that combat, that gameplay loop and that flight mechanic, you can pay like $5 a month to Xbox or Microsoft and try out the game, since I believe it is available on Origin, so you can go ahead and try doing that. If you are an old player who did have the game in the past, who already has it in its library, then maybe dropping in it and having some fun in it from time to time isn't such a bad idea. You already paid for the product and it did improve after 1 year of its release, so there is some content for you to do in it, and who knows, some of the progress might even carry over to 2.0, and it's currently really easy to progress in Anthem and fully equip your javelin. So at the very least, for some of the stuff you can get, like cosmetics, some armor pieces, yeah, that's just my opinion on all of this. This is it though. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, a comment, like and subscribe on it would be super appreciated, and I will see you guys next time.